All right, and welcome to One Up.
The nerd. Was that really
How's it
our
go?
intro?
I think so. Why can't it be?
Okay.
Is that
Yeah, let's
okay?
do it. No, it
Yeah.
works.
Cool. Well,
Cool.
hello and hello and welcome to another episode, kind of a back-to-back episode
Back to
of
back to back.
back-to-back of One Up to Nerd. I'm Frankie,
And I'm Kevin.
and thanks for tuning in. We've never done two episodes this close in frequency, so this is kind of new for us.
Can we handle it?
I can handle that.
Do we have enough to talk about?
Well, that was the thing, right? I think at first there was a couple of things that came out on social media that we were buzzing back and forth on, like, hey, let's record another episode, and then we sat down and we're like, wait, do we have enough to talk about?
Yeah.
But I think we do. I think there's some really cool stuff that's come out in the last week, and I'm really excited. So if you're new to the show, One Up to Nerd is a podcast that Kevin and I started almost 2 years ago, and we're up to episode 23, which is really cool.
Season 2, episod 23.
Season
We just
2.
never reset the episode counter, so there's only 23 episodes.
Yeah, I think it's like it doesn't Dragon Ball Z isn't there just like one season and it's like 75 episodes or something like that?
Oh, I don't know.
I think there's something like one of my somebody that I work with was telling me about that because he was talking about Dragon Ball, and I was like, I don't pay attention to Dragon Ball, but
yeah,
then that detail came out. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Anyways,
I did for a minute, but only like watching episodes, didn't really get into that any further.
Sure. So One Up to Nerd is a podcast Kevin and I started almost 2 years ago, and we use the podcast as a means to explore our nerdiness and try new things, and it's taken us into quite a few different new nerd channels. It's pretty neat.
But nowhere really that new within the last 2 weeks.
Nowhere too new, but there's exciting things for like gamers out there, and some TV shows that are coming around the corner that I'm pumped for. So yes, I guess with the first thing, first of all, make sure to like, subscribe, have notifications on, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, all those social media things, because if you don't follow that, then what's the point, right? So what's the point of all this? With no further ado, the first thing that where is my agenda? There we go. Yeah. The first thing that I wanted to talk about was Unreal Engine 5.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning. It was premiered.
So nice.
It looks incredible, and as much more as it was sort of just exciting to see the level of detail that was shown in that presentation, it just made you think about where like gaming was going.
The possibility of it all.
The possibility. Thinking about applying that tech to the games you already play, right? The Gears of War, Halo, God of War, Assassin's Creed. This is Ghost of Tsushima, which is coming around the corner. Can you think about Unreal Engine 5 or Ghost of Tsushima running on Unreal 5? No, that's going to be insane.
It's not quite the way it's going to work.
Okay, so explain that to me.
So Unreal 5 is the next iteration of the Unreal Engine, which, all these super popular games are built with. There's quite a bit of new features and new technology that is coming with Unreal 5. A lot of the rendering pipeline and all these like super high detail models that an artist can make. They don't have to be sort of edited down for level of detail to make it more game performant. A lot of the way that artists will create art for games will start super high resolution, and then they'll start to sort of abstract a lower level of detail, less polys, and sort of a smaller asset. But with this new Unreal Engine update, they're sort of procedurally handling sort of the down or the reduction of quality in the model just through the engine. So there's not a whole lot of work that has to be done. And what that allows Unreal to do is really take up as much performance as needed from the computer to render as much detail as that computer is capable of doing, as opposed to the game maker really having to spend a lot of time managing, performance profiles of the games they're making. So it's going to be something that developers will have to take advantage of and utilize in order to have the games that they're making to be able to use this tech. There's a lot of cool stuff that you were talking around animations. The tech demo video that they put out was incredible.
Is that even
but
a game? I don't even know
no,
if
it's not a game. It's a tech demo. So they do this every time they come out with a new sort of major iteration of an engine. And they do it to just like spark people's imagination. And what you're saying is that it includes all these different types of games or features and tech that you would expect to see in these different games, right? Uncharted and the couple
Oh
games
yeah,
that you mentioned.
I mean that's kind of how it felt. It felt like on Tomb Raider,
They
Uncharted.
did it on purpose, right?
Yeah.
The climbing and all the different
Totally.
ways that the character rigs will sort of adapt programmatically to the environment that's set up. Like that's a lot less effort that game makers have to put in to create these looks and feel in the way that characters animate. And of course, this is at the top end of the top end of the top end of game production, right? Like super high end asset quality and animations. But it's just like this is a huge like level up, evening of the playing field. Like it allows more complex games and higher production quality with less effort. And that's the coolest. Like the possibilities just sort of start to become endless in terms of like what game makers are going to be able to do to create higher quality games just sort of out of the gates, right?
Right.
I don't know,
So when
I'm
you say,
super excited by it.
yeah, so when you say like it's making game developers' lives easier, right?
Hmm.
Because if I'm hearing you correctly, the level of detail is already in the art, and the
Yep.
Unreal Engine is just bringing that out.
Yep. And
Um,
so, and that's in contrast to, let's say, we're playing a game like Star Wars Battlefront, right? You've got these character models that you're seeing at different distances, right? So when you first see a character model, maybe you're 50 meters away, right?
right.
That's going to be one level of detail. And then there might be 7 additional levels of detail from 40 meters and 30 meters, and then like 20 meters, and then 15, and then 10, and then 5, and then 1. Like if you're right up close to a model, you might see a super high resolution version of that model. But all 7 of those steps have to be created individually by the artists. They have to go in and sort of reduce the poly counts. They have to reduce the texture quality and the texture size. And so that's like what this is doing is enabling artists basically just to drop a asset into the engine as they would have created it in a 3D program,
Wow,
and just have it out of the gates.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, and so what do the developers pay from a little bit of a business standpoint here? And I'm not too familiar, obviously, but like, do the developers just is it just free? Is it free source? Is it free source
So
stuff? Like, can they just
so
buy this or pick it up? And
the common game engines, Unreal and Unity being the 2 big ones. Amazon, bought a version of Crytek and have sort of branched and created the Lumberyard game engine. And so Unreal and Unity were previously both charging around, I think it's around 30%, or maybe not 30%, some percentage of royalties. If you were,
they get a royalty off the total sales of
yeah,
whatever. Really? Wow.
yeah.
Interesting.
It's similar to Apple or iOS store or any sort of
Yeah.
first party store. They were taking a percentage. There may have been different ways to do business with them depending on who you are. Like I don't think that perhaps a Blizzard, if they're using Unity, is paying a percentage.
Sure.
But Unreal, once Fortnite blew up, like basically made everything free that everybody could use Unreal for free. They started doing a lot of developer grants to give money to developers who were going to use Unreal. But each engine has its pros, its cons, has different strengths and capabilities. Unreal is, of course, like the highest sort of production value and creation tool in terms of quality. Unity is more common within the mobile games industry.
Sure.
The lighter weight, it's a little easier to use in some respects. But if
Um,
you're making an Uncharted or you're making a Fortnite, right? Like Unreal might be the way to go.
Well, there was a great the presentation was fantastic, and I was blown away. The presentation was done on the new Xbox or the new PS5.
Yeah.
And it took me down a little bit of a deep, not even close to a deep dive, but I started going into PS5 versus the new Xbox, and I found a really great article and then YouTube video that was posted by IGN. And you can go and you can find that on their YouTube. I linked it on our Facebook also. But there were two guys making sort of doing a comparative analysis of the two new next gen consoles, and I'm definitely excited for the next gen. I have a PS4. I don't have an Xbox. I'm running the PC. I love my PC. And from what I'm gathering, there's a lot of people moving to PC. There's a big movement in that direction.
Yeah.
But with consoles specifically, there's that new level of that excitement about the next one, and which one are you going to get, and who's going to be better, and which one's going to have the better exclusive titles and this and that. And there was a great analogy that the guy on the video made, and he was sort of explaining two of them. They were explaining the differences a little bit, and they were saying that both consoles kind of came to the same destination in two different ways. And the way they were explaining this was that to improve performance and speed and power and everything else like that the PS5, if we would break it down, is basically like a V6 engine but turbocharged, right? It's a turbocharged V6 engine. Meanwhile, the Xbox X is a true V8 engine, so it's just meteor, right? They're both getting to the same place in different ways, and what will be interesting is 6, 7, 8 months down the road is which solution was the better one, and that won't be able to be extrapolated until after we've hit until the consoles have hit critical mass and gone out into the market and sort of gotten that mass data. So I thought that was really, really cool, especially for someone like me that is not that familiar with the super, super edgy techie information and stuff like that. Like, that was cool.
So yeah, I've pulled up the specs. I'm looking at them. When you said that, I started to type in PS5 versus Xbox, what are the specs and which one's better, and I started to see all this the Xbox is better because of this, and then the PlayStation is better, all these different headlines, and
right.
And then I saw something that was Microsoft is winning the PR war for the next generation. And then you made that analogy, and I'm like, what are you actually talking about? And I was working at EA for the launch of the last generation. Worked on Battlefield 4, and we launched that across both generations, the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One, plus PS3, PS4. And in many ways, PlayStation came out of the gates in the last generation and just blew Microsoft out of the water in so many different ways. And led to the PlayStation being the more popular, the PlayStation 4 being the more popular of this current generation.
Right.
And there weren't a lot of significant, at least sort of looking back, they had their pros and cons. But I'm looking at the specs right now, and you're talking about the PlayStation being the maybe a turbo or supercharged V6, and the Xbox being the V8 is the CPU, the GPU, some of the memory bandwidth, and the total storage size on the Xbox is larger. But when you look at the GPU, right, on the PlayStation, it's a lower bandwidth, but it's a higher frequency. So it's a 2.23 gigs versus the 1.8 for the Xbox.
Right.
And then the memory bandwidth for the PlayStation is actually just flat, whereas I think the Xbox has a little bit of variability in terms of the degree of how it's choosing to put out memory. And I would say that it's really going to come down to the software and how both PlayStation and Xbox are utilizing that, right? And that's what we see as the generations mature is they're coming out, they're releasing their iteration 1 or whatever version they're on of these new hardware specs, and then it's going to take developers like probably a year and a half to 2 years to really start pushing these to their max. And then we're going to start to see like for these top end games, like who's going to be like, which one's going to perform better, which one's going to look better. They're all going to have these different aspects, and then it comes down to like exclusivity and like what sort of like programs are being offered. And this is the first generation I bought into PlayStation with PS4. Cool. And they made a fan out of me, and I just don't know, no matter what Xbox does here, that I'm going to be interested in it, right? Like,
well, see, that's the thing too, because like you have a PC, and for the most part, I don't know if buying an Xbox for any reason besides, I guess, the exclusive games that are there exclusive games that just go to the console?
Yeah. I mean, Last of Us is an exclusive PlayStation, right?
Right. I know Sony you're pumped for that. I know you're super excited for that.
Yeah. But like, there has not been any exclusives on Xbox this generation that I was like,
that you had to have.
I need to go have that.
And I'm not a big Halo guy, so like, I think I know a lot of people.
Used to be.
You used to be. Well, no, yeah. I never really was. So, I think that I'm not their customer.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I want to go into now is sort of following our conversation last week regarding the digital avatars. And
are you a believer now?
Well, I want to take I want to back step here for a second, because I didn't really put out a skeptic vibe. I didn't think, but you're saying
I just feel you're always skeptical.
I'm always that's so funny, because that's how I feel about you.
I think I felt your skepticism in our pre-conversations to the episode. I don't know that you actually laid down any skepticism. You had more intrigue
from a certain point of view. Maybe you thought I was skeptical, but I mean, just shortly after that, there was Facebook released their own Bitmoji thing, and that's
I got carried away.
That's circulating Facebook right now, and I think it's always kind of interesting and fun and entertaining to imagine yourself in this as this sort of animated caricature.
Right.
But
right?
Huh?
I said right?
Yeah, right, for sure. But more interesting than just your Facebook Bitmoji, there was an article that came out about VR skin. Did you see this?
No, I mean, you linked it to me, and I've been familiar with haptics, which is sort of what it represents. But explain it. It was really neat.
So there's an article, I linked it on our Facebook. Go check it out. I'm gonna I'll start on YouTube especially. I'm gonna start putting the links. To these articles. I think it's important. But the where technology is going in haptic, that sort of that sensory tech is going to be making a huge leap here pretty soon. And the article that I linked was about VR skin. So if you can imagine, it was like this sheet, kind of a thick, almost like, what are those neoprene mats? It looked like a neoprene mat that was in the video, and it had
like a wetsuit.
Yeah, maybe a little bit thicker. I'm thinking about like some of those gaming mats that I have for tabletops.
Yeah.
Wetsuit's another good example. But it had these little round sensors on it. And what this article was basically saying was like, this is the tech that we're going to be wearing in our VR experiences pretty soon. I mean, this is going to be, because it can be suited as a glove, it can be suited as a suit, and you just immediately go to Ready Player One. You're immediately thinking like, I'm going to get that suit. I'm going to put this shit on. The haptic sensors are going to then
force feedback. It's basically getting, haptics is all about force feedback, right? It's right. Allowing you to feel what is happening in the environment around you in VR, right?
So the article talks about like how virtual reality is, we're emulating the senses, right? So first it's sight, right?
Yep.
Sight, hearing, Next is touch.
Yep.
You know, once they get smell, I'm out. Like that's shit's crazy. I'll just turn into a virtual chef, and I'll cook virtual food, and everybody can virtual taste and virtual smell. It'd be hilarious.
Well, yeah.
But
What's so interesting to me about
crazy.
this is this sort of like repeated convergence of different technologies, and the continued maturity of certain technologies. And so like wearables and smart fabrics and like sort of nano laced graphene within fabrics, like there's all sorts of really interesting applications that are developing in parallel. And then you start to see this like inroad of all of a sudden, like, we're going to take this technology now and we're going to do a new thing. And sometimes it's too early, right? So like the Connect with Microsoft is a great example. That technology by itself was groundbreaking, but like was kind of gimmicky, right? Like it was a single experience of one of these senses, and it kind of was like, what, like, who is going to be taking advantage of this? And that's one of the challenges that you have with new hardware technologies, is that the game makers have to be able to use these systems in a very easy way, because for them to be able to invest in like developing, force feedback and haptics as part of a game experience is really challenging. But if somebody develops those sort of development kits that allow game makers just to plug in, and it just sort of takes care of all of the touch and the feel and the environment effects, it then allows that to be consumed. And so when you sent me this VR skin, I was like I just thought of like, why is the Kinect not being used? But then you start to think about like, it's a combination, right? That it gives you the haptics, but it also allows the more sensory input of where your limbs are and where you are in the game space. So it's not just about having the VR headset plus the suit, and then you're still wearing the controllers. It's getting rid of the controllers, and your suit is like actually how you're interfacing and interacting with stuff, which is just like, we're seeing the tech start to become real. Who's gonna first like do it? How affordable is it gonna be? Like,
it's not gonna be affordable.
I want to get suited up, like,
of
I want to be
right.
I want to have
be
like
Wade Watts. You want to be Wade Watts, and you want to get that. You want to get that suit, and you want to pull it out of that big box and be like, "Oh yeah, here we go."
Yep, exactly.
And not only that, but like you might see that the competitive nature of the tech coming out. Wow. In the years to come, in the movie, right? He got that new battle suit, right? That was so like he had a little bit of an edge over everybody because his suit was new. He had the fresh tech, the haptic technology in his suit was going to be a little bit more responsive than other people's. It's going to give him an edge. And in that world, in Oasis, it was super competitive, right? Everyone was sort of vying for the things that they were looking for. So
that's like the almost pay to win, but it's like his bandwidth to control his digital avatar was just higher now that he had this new suit, and then he got the new updated battle like avatar in the game, and then he was just like wrecking, right?
It was really, I mean, that movie is such a amazing representation of really
so
where it's going, right? I mean, it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like fantasy to a certain level, because we're kind of really on the cusp of it within the next 20 years. I mean,
I think so.
In 20 years, you're going to see something, if we're not there already, something close. And then, or maybe something that's, I mean, we might be in the next, think of 20 years, it's 2020, in the year 2000, think of our games. Where it is.
I'm still thinking of myself in 20 years. Just again, talking about like where you see like at some of these consumer electronic shows, right? CES in Vegas. Like I've been seeing a lot about wearables and haptics and VR, right? Like and there's some controversy about it because the porn industry has largely now been sort of removed from CES. And one of the things that you were seeing at CES was a lot of these adult companies who are developing this technology for VR sort of exploration within that space. And then, in the last couple of years, it's gotten a little bit more conservative, and they said, "Oh, we're not allowing these kinds of companies to be here." But they are actually pushing this technology just as much as anybody else because
I'm
there's
sure
such a
they are.
massive market for it.
They are. I don't really want to comment
Um,
too much on the porn industry, but
well,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
but I was only using it to sort of say like
no, but
that there's so many avenues of people that are invested in this sort of like virtual feeling type experience.
right. I agree, and I'm not saying like I don't want to comment because I don't feel like it's appropriate or whatever. But like, it's just there's a movie that talks about like how the porn industry is literally like they are the reason why so much technology has made the progress that it's made.
What movie is that?
And it wasn't like and like then he
Fight
gave the
Club? Sounds
reasons.
like a Fight Club thing.
No, it was like something like super bad or something. It was like a comedy, but it was like a kind of a took a turn where he was like laying down some facts.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
like, oh shit, you're right. And he was like, yeah, dude, porn, bro. Like that's why the reason why we have this PC right now is because of porn. Anyways, it was like, or maybe it was like Zach and Miri make a porno, and then it was like some, I don't know. Anyways,
Yeah.
now I'm curious. I'm gonna go back and figure it out.
You're gonna go back and
I'm
look
gonna
at
go back and watch a ton of porn and figure this out.
through your annals of movie history. See what I did there?
No. Moving on from pornography.
Dude, when I saw this next thing, I was just like, give me a break. And I went and searched like the references. I was like, who was first reporting this? And didn't really think that it was legitimate until I started seeing more of it get reported. It's a very obscure, like kind of unbelievable thing.
Right. And well, take it
I'm
away.
gonna let you say it.
Wait. So NASA
Apparently,
scientist,
allegedly,
a NASA scientist. I don't know, singular, plural. I don't know.
plural,
One
more
guess,
than likely.
whatever. More, yeah. In Antarctica, the place where the thing originated, discovered a parallel universe, and just really interesting stuff.
Evidence of a parallel
Evidence
universe.
of yeah, and I want to pull up this article. I want to read the snippet because I should have done this beforehand, but basically they were measuring particles that I guess that travel to space or from space to Earth. Is that accurate?
Earth out to space. So like
Earth
generally
out to space.
we see particles coming to Earth. Earth as sort of a magnetic presence in space time. But we somehow detected particles going out very easily of our ecosystem.
Right. Okay. I'm gonna read this I'm gonna read this this paragraph. This is from the New York Post. NASA used an antenna named Anita, Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, via a giant balloon to detect high energy particles that can only be detected coming down from space. However, Anita reportedly discovered a heavier particle that comes from up out of the Earth. The findings from the NASA scientists are saying that the particle is traveling backward in time, which suggests a parallel universe. Scientist Ibrahim Safa spoke on the experiment and the results, saying, "We're left with the most exciting or the most boring possibilities." And I think that was kind of that little line there is kind of an interesting sort of take on it, right? This is either really exciting or not at all. I don't really know. I don't think they know.
They don't really know what it is. It's just the theory of like, well, if this particle is moving, in the opposite direction, like then it must be that time is moving in the opposite direction in some way relative to this particle.
Right. Look at it. I'm not a scientist.
The tau neutrino.
I'm not a scientist. I'm not that smart. Trying to understand this and time relativity. Does this break Einstein's theory of relativity, or is it in line with it? I don't know. The idea of a parallel universe. Okay, so hold on. Does that just mean like the clock, like the clock's just moving counterclockwise? Is that all that means? Is that like the dial on the clock, like the little hand on the clock is going the other direction?
Well, time at a universal scale like doesn't exist according to a clock. So
Okay.
that's something that I very basically understand.
That's already way more intelligent than I could grasp.
And there's this idea about entropy that sort of like everything is in a state of decay. And that is how we are able to measure time, at a universal scale. And I could be completely off on this. Like I'm trying.
No,
to
you sound
reflect,
brilliant. Just keep going.
I'm trying to reflect on a
you
lot
sound
of
amazing.
stuff.
You're carrying the team on this one right now.
And
whatever.
And so like the implication for me at that level is like it's a reversal. It's this a state of the universe that is going in the opposite direction of the universe that we're going in, right? And like one of the things that's happening at the universal scale is like space and time is continuing to expand. Like there's an outward expansion of this, like what feels like an infinite sort of infinitely large universe. There is an edge to it, and it is expanding. That's sort of what we've been able to discover.
So we're left to assume that within this parallel universe that space is.
That's the implication that I went with this, is like that if time is moving in sort of the opposite direction, that like there is actually a parallel universe in which things are contracting, and then like what are the implications of that? I don't know.
Oh my god, this is great. All I can think of is like Keanu Reeves and just like, whoa.
Well, and this is, this starts to get into quantum physics and mechanics, and like how atoms and matter even exist, and like what is gravity, right? Like gravity is what we're trying to explain within the quantum physics and quantum theory.
Can't even even.
What is the force of gravity, right? Well, so there's all kinds of really cool things. I'm going.
Go. Just go, Kevin. Go.
I don't know. This is like a hobby interest of mine.
Go. You got this.
So listen. I don't know. I've just been super interested in the quantum sort of possibility, right? And a lot of things that we talk about and we believe or we sort of feel are true start to get really explainable when you start to talk about quantum physics and quantum mechanics.
They get to be explainable or unexplainable?
Explainable or theoretically explainable, right? So like we know that gravity exists as a byproduct of the magnetism created by the spinning of our Earth, around the sun, and then we've got the moon that sort of creates waves and a lot of sort of other pull on our natural environment. This is why you end up seeing a lot of similarity within nature of different constructs and flowers that look in the similar way as like the way that blowfish in the ocean create their little nests. But then like there's a and so at that level there's like an interconnectedness of the energy of all matter. This is something that like did you get into Debs at all on was it Hulu? Have you seen that?
No, not yet.
So Ron Swanson is like this like chief technologist at this quantum company that is developing this AI. It's hysterical, but they get into this like theory.
It's on Hulu.
Yeah, it's a really deep show that explains or that starts to have a narrative around these really complex possibilities. And one of the things they talk about, this is going to be a bit of a spoiler, but they have this theory that they talk about in relation to cause and effect. That basically everything can be explainable through cause and effect. And because that is true, a computer can map all cause and effect of everything. Like a supercomputer, an AI can learn like cause and effect at a molecular sort of quantum level. And that's the kind of like space that this show takes place in. And within that, like there's this energy sort of layer of our existence. Like human bodies create energy, and like how do they do that? And like they're using calories and all these things. But also we have energy throughout our body. And I don't know if you've heard of Reiki. It's like energy therapy.
Okay, so
I thought it was like the most. We already had. We kind of already had this conversation. No, we already had it on Facebook. Remember?
Annie's gonna get tons of validation on this one.
Well, so in my sort of like randomness of doing searching on the internet, I stumbled across this white paper by the government, by the National Health Institute, that goes in and is talking about these different energy mechanics relative to quantum theory, and how they basically are real things. Like, we have energy fields in our body,
Totally.
and like people have sort of expressed their ability to be sensitive to that energy, and like, that they can feel when energy is blocked in certain parts of people's body, um, and that they can sort of heal those blockages, and help people's bodies sort of come back in line. And when you start to think about how blood flows through the body, and how, like, our energy flows through our nervous system, it's like, huh, this kind of is weird and starts to make sense.
Sure. Well, I think one of the
Well, and
simplest
what's
forms of what you're talking about is grounding, right? It's just
yeah, well,
feet on the ground,
possibly, yeah, I remember you talking about that.
and putting, your body is just is a magnet conducting electricity in some respects, and connecting to the ground, which is also another giant magnet, is kind of puts things back, even, and
Maybe. Well, the thing is like,
I
it's
love your
it's
reactions to all this right now, by
we
the way.
don't, within our culture and our society, especially in the West, like, we have this very, like, strong affinity for Western medicine and science, which is very uh tangible, right? Like, and then when you start thinking about Eastern medicine, and it's a little bit less so, right? It's more
Sure. Well, it's
herbal,
like,
and like based in wisdom society and culture. And for me,
which
like,
is which I think there's a validity in it.
there's
And
total validity, but it's within, like,
there
story and conjecture that is not necessarily, like, playing to the science.
there's a book. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna. So Jeremy Sampson was telling me, and Jeremy, after this podcast, I'm gonna shoot you a text, because I'm gonna and then I'm gonna forward it to Kevin, because Kevin, you're gonna trip balls getting some of this insight. But it was talking about Native Americans and their and how they a lot of ancient cultures and societies were so had that wisdom culture
Yep.
that allowed them to thrive in many respects. And
Yep.
it was like, it was a connection to the energies of the world
Of the world.
that allowed them to, kind of tap into it, right? That was like, doing things to attract salmon through the river,
Yep.
and stuff like that. And I'm gonna have to get that information,
No,
because
I've gone down this path.
Jeremy was like, the way you are getting excited about this podcast, when he was talking about it, this was months ago, he was clearly like amped about it. He'd already
Yeah.
read it and stuff like
Yep.
that, but just explaining it to us, it was definitely something he was
Yeah, there's
exciting. It was exciting.
there's an extrapolation of a lot of these sorts of thoughts into, like, what about our society, like, no longer allows us to be able to, like, perceive or think or talk or understand some of these more metaphysical properties of our existence, that, like,
Sure.
we just don't get exposure to. Nobody talks to them, or nobody talks to us about it. Nobody, like, shows
Why is
us
that? Why do you think that is? You were just so
well,
focused on
because we're so
on being
disconnected.
progressive.
I mean, we've broken nature, right? Like, nature does not exist. We
Well,
have we have we have
how we?
we have
Well, hold on.
systematically caged and altered the course of nature. Like, there's no meta natural system that, like, we have not had an impact on.
Okay,
And
fair enough.
so, like, when you start to think about that, of,
I
like,
agree with the last part.
with, like, the way that the United States was sort of populated, and how everybody moved west, and then, like, all the dams, like, we built, like, thousands upon thousands of dams in every sort of waterway that existed. um Now all the pollution, and the ways that we sort of, like, take over certain plots of land, we've destroyed all the natural, like, migratory patterns of land-based animals. Birds are still around.
Mm.
But that, like, I don't know where I was going with that, but what I wanted to say was, do you remember the water diviners? Do you remember this as a concept? So there's this there's this like old technique about finding water in the ground where people would like walk
They'd
around
hold this like
holding up
stick.
sticks.
Yeah,
And they would sort of like
look like a wishbone.
yeah, it would look like a
Yeah.
wishbone, and they would
Yeah, yeah.
walk around and they'd be able to find where water was.
Sure.
You know, and there are still people that do that as a service.
And are accurate as fuck.
They're accurate. Well, maybe some of them are, perhaps some of them aren't, but like I believe that they are. And so why? Like, how do they do that? Like, how do they feel and sense that there's water in the ground, right? Like, because they are attuned to some sort of energy.
There's a sixth sense, man. There's a sixth
movement.
sense.
There is.
So yeah, for
totally
sure.
is.
I'm gonna be trying a hand at meditation. And I'm gonna.
Have you not done any meditating before?
Not really, no. My mother is a longtime meditator. She actually taught a class on meditation. And she's like, she learned this specific form of meditation. I don't remember the name of it, but it was like
transcendental something meditation.
No, that's not even. I know that's not even close. She like learned it from like some guru, right? And like in some respects, like apprenticed to this guy. This is way before children.
Wow, this is a part of your family history I do not know.
She has all of his lectures, all of his stuff on cassette. And has just actually asked me. I bought the thing on Amazon the other day to like put the cassettes in through a USB in it.
Awesome.
To transcribe this and or transfer the data to digital. So, you know, I'm gonna be taking this a journey, and
cool.
I told my mom I would, and I think she was really excited, and we just kind of bond, you know. So, you know. There's way more to everything that we've talked about, you know, I believe in. And I think that what we're getting at is that there's just way more to our world and our universe that we don't understand, that goes beyond just what we see, you know, and what you're talking about is that it being tangible, the world tangible, and having the impact on the tangible world. That hits me in a spot that I connect with, because I agree with you. I agree with you in a big way. And so then we get into like, you know, is there a force?
That's where I was going to start to go about gravity. Is like, if there is a force that exists, like there is the possibility that we can wield it. Right. But you know, I'm not saying without like technology,
unlimited power.
I'm not talking about without like some sort of technological sort of ability, but like, you know, if we do have these other energistic senses that we are just not really in tune with or don't really develop because nobody talks about them, we don't have learning around them in our sort of cultures and development. You know, who knows what is possible, right? Like,
there seems like that would take I don't know why. This is my feeling that going down that road and embracing that as a human race would take us down a much different evolutionary path than, let's say, going the super techie route, right? And just and ending up in like Borg status.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean?
I've fantasized about what you're talking about. Like, what if we had developed, you know, more in line with a natural ecosystem, right? Like,
totally.
what would the world look like if the West had not sort of industrialized and we had more closely integrated with the natural cycle of the Earth?
Bro, I am loving this conversation. First of all, this has got to be one of my favorite podcasts we've ever done. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I think we should talk about this some more. We do have other things to discuss, however.
Not really. Like, this is our podcast.
Well,
we can
that's
talk about
true.
whatever we want.
I mean, we had a cool list, but yeah. I mean, I'm gonna follow on the next podcast. We're gonna follow up on this. Let's get. Okay. I want to keep discussing this.
Or maybe we just do a deep dive as a separate episode. That's sort of an offshoot.
something.
Something.
I'm
We'll
gonna
talk
get that.
more.
I'm gonna get those resources on what Jeremy was discussing and kind of follow up with maybe some insights from whatever it is that comes out of that. So
I found the article that was on the National Health Institute website. It's Distant Healing Intention Therapies, an overview of the scientific evidence. I read this and I just sort of looked at Christy and I was like, I'm sorry that I've ever doubted you. Like, there is actual scientific theory that starts to explain like how this stuff exists.
So I mean, I don't want to
like
necessarily validate all of the female race, but I mean, when we start talking about astrological signs and stuff like that, and whether or not that's a valid form of I mean, is it that
I have some theories on that are detached from the astrological signs, like, which I think are made up and sort of
but is it
interesting
though?
story.
I mean, of course it's made up. Somebody had to make it up, but like,
it's a categorization. It's a categorization of averages across like a population, right? So like, if I say something to be true about some segment of people that were born in some segment of time, like, I'm more than likely going to be right to some degree, right? And so like, I don't know, like this starts to get into personality assessments and categorizations, and like, I think we are a lot less categorizable than and like in the way that we are, in the ways that we are different than we are sort of in the ways that we are similar. We just sort of, I don't know, we'll talk about it later. That's another subject for a much deeper time.
Okay.
Shifting gears
to
talked
video games.
Back to video games.
Such a weird no, actually not video games. Well,
it's Spellbreakers.
Yeah,
did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, not that excited. I was super excited about getting the beta because I think you just feel like, oh, I got the beta key, cool, like, exclusive. But
and then we did,
we didn't really play much. It is. I would tell you what. There's this game that we mentioned in the last podcast called Spellbreakers, and it's hard. It is really hard. Just shooting spells at people is not as easy as shooting a gun at somebody, in this way. I don't really have much to say.
I mean,
I need more. You
had me really excited about it. I went and downloaded it. I think I had it installed before you did, and then went through the very brief tutorial, which it's in beta, it's not released, and then just got wrecked. I went in after the tutorial, played one mission, and like got to jump around 3 or 4 times, and just had somebody kill me. We were talking about that as like the difficulty curve was just too high. From here's this new game that's like kind of similar to all the other games that you've played. They're like this game, but this one's fantasy and has spells. Okay, but it doesn't play, and it plays similarly, but also doesn't, right? You're throwing fireballs around and like you're jumping into space with your magic ability.
It kind of reminded me of Tribes a little bit. You remember playing Tribes back in the day? I mean, I know you've only had a handful of matches. I've played like a dozen or so. I think Joe just probably played a little bit more even. He's got a lot of kills. I've played a dozen or so matches, maybe a little bit more, and I have 1 kill. One.
I played one and I died.
JoJo's like, I basically like hang out and like watch people go at each other, and then I just come in and go like just kills. I'm like, wow, you're such an ass. But
that's what I was telling you about.
Effective.
It is.
So what's interesting is, so like you before you jump into the match, you have to pick like a primary element. Fucking, is it really that far off from what we're talking about? You pick a primary elemental power, right?
Yep.
Wind, fire, water, ice. And those are way more important. Picking that primary weapon is way more important than I originally gave it thought of.
Oh, really?
So I was starting off with like wind. The wind, I was like shooting wind gusts at people, and like that was doing 0 damage.
I didn't even get to understand like how this worked.
Right.
Because they layer you with like the gear, and then there's like some kind of charm, and then there's like your base element, and then there's like some kind of like special ability, and like these are all items that you can pick up, and like
it's okay. It's, I mean, there's way more to it than I originally thought, right? You have a primary element, and then when you pick that before you go into the game. When you're playing the game, you find other elements to pick up as a
Right.
secondary, right?
It's like your upgrade through
You,
continuing to play. It's like picking up
well,
a new weapon, right?
you have a left hand and a right hand, right? That's sort of how they're putting it out there as, and so each right hand has a primary weapon, and then like a power weapon, right? So like if you have the fire gauntlet, we'll call it, you throw a fireball and that's your primary, and then like your second big power for the fire is like you throw up like a firewall,
Mm-hmm.
right? I like ice.
Hmm.
I'm playing with that right now because it's basically you turn into like an ice bow and arrow, and you start. It's like it's a sniper, basically, effectively a sniper. So it's like a long range, high damage. I look for the stone as my secondary because it's mid range, heavy damage.
Mm.
So I kind of can like stay kind of far away. The only thing with the stone is that you have to be on the ground. Like you come down,
Got
you do
it.
like a Hulk, or not Hulk, but like a superhero landing, and right, and the like earth shoots up. And then like you said, they layer other things with it. Teleporting, flying, certain things like that.
So it's a lot to learn
It's a
very
lot.
quickly.
Yeah.
I need like a noob level that like has half of that disabled that just allows you to like shoot the little one, the left hand.
They have
Choo, choo,
practice.
choo.
They have practice give it another shot. We'll play next week or something. Total War. I've been playing a lot of Total War recently. There's
Getting ready for the new one.
I already pre-ordered it. Comes out in 2 hours. The Warden and the Paunch. I gotta say that I'm super.
You said that. It's just funny.
It's called. That's what it's called. I'm just reading it. The Warden and the Paunch, and the Paunch is this. He's part of the greenskins, which kind of like an orc type, but there's multiple. There's like orcs and there's like greenskins. But I gotta say, as a fan of the franchise, I'm proud. I'm a proud fan because Creative Assembly does such a good job coming out with new DLC, and they put effort behind it. They continue to add to the narrative, add to the story, add characters that make sense, that fits. They identify like this faction is missing this kind of lord or hero, and let's add that. With the expansion, they're adding in like a couple other heroes for different factions. There's a new like lion chariot unit being added. So there's 2 like white lions like pulling this chariot. And it's a high elven unit. I'm super pumped. I've been playing a lot of the Mortal Empires campaign, which is like the grand campaign that encompasses all the different factions across both Warhammer and Warhammer 2. I'm about 90 turns into it. I have about 12 or 13 territories under my control, and it's starting to get spicy. It's like originally you start on that main island where that big warp thing is, and then as you start like kind of settling in, I've left like myself and 2 other like high elven not factions, other high elven kingdoms, we'll call them. Like I've left them. I haven't like tried to conquer everybody, like I've formed like strong trade alliances. I'm really looking at it from a grand campaign standpoint. After I saw that trailer for that DLC, I really was like, I'm getting back into this. Let's get on it. I had a campaign. I started a new campaign. I kind of took my time. I kind of was a very internal in the beginning. Build that economy up. Took small moves. Played carefully. Like took chances when I could. I have heroes that are like level 20, 22 that are just they're beasts. In, they kill 150, 100, like they kill a whole company of men by themselves. It's amazing. So Total War, still loving it. I'm always going to be a fan.
Dang. I played a couple campaigns when it first came out, or we were talking about it, and then just fell off. I actually got the Three Kingdoms, played a couple there, and just it's hard for me to get back into it and sort of remember where I was at and like what kind of strategic decisions I was making, and
I
like
know.
unless I'm
I hear that.
continually playing, right, like a little
Right.
bit every day. I'm gonna take a couple more moves.
Yeah.
And that's just not where I'm at
Sure. I
mentally
know.
right now.
I know you're not. I know you're not.
Yeah.
Let's see. Moving away from that, a couple TV shows coming on Netflix pretty soon. Umbrella Academy season 2 coming out. Super awesome. Super excited for that. The Order season 2. Really excited for that.
The Order was the
that was the Kevin Bacon young. Like I kind of that's how I compared him as like a young Kevin Bacon. He gets recruited to be in this order of mages, and which
young
is
Kevin Bacon. Okay, I see it. I couldn't really put my finger on what I thought he looked like.
And it's like he has like this whole Footloose vibe, like he's like from out of towner and whatever. So
we really enjoyed it. We watched the first season.
Yeah. Check that out.
Umbrella Academy. I'm super pumped that that's coming back. I didn't know that was coming back.
I got to read the second graphic novel before it comes out, though. I have it. I own it. I just need to read it. There's I feel like I'm just kind of like rolling off these next few things, and there's not too much to talk about because we spent a good amount of time on the first stuff, and it was well deserved. It was a great conversation. But there's like this other stuff like Crucible. I don't know.
This is a new Amazon game that's coming out. That's I said it's another battle royale game. I just started seeing a bunch of like chatter and headlines about it. Like Amazon is serious about games with this game, and then I saw it and I was like, how? I don't really know, but I'm gonna try to find. It came out today, apparently. But you can't find, at least I couldn't find
where can you download it? Is it free to play?
I don't know. I have no idea.
It's just a mystery game.
It's just a mystery game
that Amazon made.
Okay.
Well then here, I want to talk a little bit about Star Citizen.
Or do you want to save that for next? We're at about an hour right now, and I'm trailing pretty hard.
Okay, we'll save Star Citizen for next time. That'll give me a little bit more time to research. Are
you gonna play any of it? Like
what? Play what?
Star Citizen.
It's not out. It's only available. No, it's in alpha.
I mean, there's many parts of the game. There are different parts that you can play, and
I didn't know. From what I understood is that the game is in alpha, but that I didn't see any sort of availability to play in alpha or join alpha. Or
they're doing something really weird. They're doing something.
Buddy, you know somebody over there that
they're doing something really maybe weird where they're developing the different modules of gameplay that you can start to experience. It's supposed to be a huge.
So this is like basically a sci-fi MMO, right? And we'll talk. We'll deep dive next time.
We'll talk about it next time.
But there's a lot of
history there.
A lot of moving parts to this game. One part takes you in space. One part takes you, shooting shit
down to the surface.
Yeah, it's. I want to talk about it. So we'll do that next time. Anyways, cool. Hey, my name is Frankie, and that's Kevin. And
you're not gonna let me say that, and I'm Kevin.
You know what? Well, I
was wondering what you were gonna do there.
I'm waiting for you to say it. And I'm Frankie.
And I'm Kevin.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening to One Up to Nerd. Make sure to like, subscribe, have your notifications on. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
And every podcast platform that you could possibly imagine.
Every podcast. Did you hear about the big guy moving to Spotify exclusively? Check. We'll talk about that later.
Oh,
anyways,
somebody.
Yeah, I don't think I'm allowed to say his name. Joe Rogan, maybe. I don't know. Anyways, yeah. So we're on Spotify. That's where we want people to, I guess hear us because it's just a great platform. So, anyways, yeah. Thanks a lot, and you guys have a great day. Maybe we'll do another one next week. Who knows?
We'll try to do another. Well, we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see what we can do. We'll see. All right. Take care. Bing.
Ding. I stopped my recording.
All right, me too. And I will stop the video.